Hello all, and welcome back to the Middle-earth In Mercia Podcast. Episode 5, A Journey in the Dark, Warhammer World Doubles. Hi everyone, I'm your host Sonny, and this is the Middle-earth In Mercia Podcast. Now first off, I should probably address the elephant in the room. It has been a lot longer than I expected since I last spoke to you. And really that forms part of the story as to why it's been so long really, and part of the learning experience and, part of the full picture that I'm hoping to pass on to you, both for those players considering tournaments and those just interested in the perspective of someone first going to a tournament. And more so than that, I also want to be sincere and authentic with you all about the production and how I've gone about the production. I'm not going to, label every single recording as and when where I'm doing it, but I am going to be fairly open in the fact that a lot of this is being done in post-production. And the reason I want to delve into all of that is because I think that as I've actually met people that have been listening to the podcast, which has been really, really cool and awesome for me, and seeing what people are actually enjoying about it, I think, at the core of that, it is the authenticity of it that I really am trying to give the ups and downs, the good, the bad, and that part of this, as I mentioned originally, was not just that I wanted to go and become a tournament player by doing a couple of tournaments and ultimately going to Ardacon. This was also a bit of an adventure into dipping my toes into podcasting. Being a mechanical engineer that works in automotive, media is not something I'm familiar with, but is something that has been an interest, and I've done a few things here and there over the years, but never anything to this extent. So I also want to record that, mainly because it's not gone perfectly. Just like the tournament experience, vast majority of it has gone great, but there have been things that I've learned, and I'd like to record them, and I'd like to share them with you. And in the spirit of that, this is being recorded right now. I have been to Warhammer Doubles. I obviously know the results, but I'll keep you on hooks for that. And I've been to Ardacon, and part of the reason that these sort of studio sessions and the editing is all happening now is because I took too much on. I also, although planned very well for how I was going to do things at the tournaments, I wanted to take a lot out of it, both socially, so that I could set myself up that if I wanted to go to future tournaments, that I had, a small pool of friends that I could go with, and people that I would say were close enough I could call friends, and then a wider group of people that I'd met in passing or played games with, and maybe could become friends in future, because I think I am quite easygoing, and once I get going, I do generally get on with people, but I'm not going to lie, I'm not one of those people that loves meeting new people and knocking down one of those barriers of entry for me, really, of the possibility of going to a tournament and not really having anyone to talk to. Yeah, that was something at Warhammer Doubles and Ardacon that I wanted to spend my time on, and I did find that really challenging to get as much recording done as I wanted. So if you'll stick with me, I have taken a lot of notes, I took a lot of screenshots, I took a lot of photos, and I have done a lot of recordings. It's just that some of it, to be honest, you're not going to want to sit here and listen to it because it was too low quality. So I will be doing some re-recordings. I will be doing some in the spirit of. I think you're still going to really enjoy it. I mean, if you listen to any of the sort of tournament podcasts, I and they all know that they do it too. And that's not an attempt to throw shade in any way, shape or form. It's just needs must, really. I'm just specifically mentioning it and raising it because it forms part of this story, part of this season 1 on the road to Articon, and I want you to get the full picture. I don't want to pretend everything went absolutely smoothly. So there it is. But yeah, that's my little explanation. So yeah, this has been my sort of rambling introduction almost for this and what I hope will form the next 3 episodes, including this. So moving on to the correspondence. Now, I received this email quite some time ago at the beginning of July, and I did reply to it, and the contents were taken on at the time. And I know Wade, who's the one that's wrote this letter, is aware of that, so I just didn't want anyone to think that I'd ignored it for 2 months and it had become irrelevant. It very much was not, and did form part of my thinking at the time. So, yeah, this was from Wade of Australia, which, yeah, thank you, Wade. I did point out to you, you are the first person to have written to me from both your country and continent. So yeah, that was very cool for me to have a listener on the other side of the world. So let's go through the letter. I'm going to read it all. As I say, I've been through it before, but yeah, I've not been through it for some time. So let's look at it with fresh eyes again. So, hi Sonny, I've just finished off episode 4 of the podcast and really think you're doing a wonderful job with it. It's really great to listen to someone who's taking the journey to a Middle-earth tournament. Listening has really inspired me to want to do something similar here in Australia, which is great, Wade. That's exactly what I was hoping I could achieve on a small scale. So, yeah, go ahead and do it, mate. Best of luck. I love that you're building a Harrod army from scratch, and it appears that you start your project around the same time as I did, at the exact same time. I got inspired by their big win or loss mentality based on the pilot's ability and choices, which I guess he means the general. There's lots of different terminologies for that. I'm really looking forward to hear how your army develops and what insights you can give and pitfalls new people developing armies can fall into, which, yeah, very much, Wade. I've got a lot to say on that. My viewpoint has changed quite drastically since the tournaments. Hearing your army list, I think you have really structured your 400 points and what your combined army of Chris, the same way I have with a couple of minor differences. I love the use of Raza, especially coupled with Suladan. I think for his points value that is incredible and that you should always take these two in the same army list because of Swarm Protector, especially the sneaky ability to up your fight value to combat a key hero that couldn't be countered by Master of Battle or any mimic ability without spending resources. Plus he has Bane of Kings with 3 attacks, massive killing potential for just 75 points, even more so than the King on horse because it loses its potential if the horse is shot out. And yeah, I think on balance there, Wade, I do agree with you that I think majority of the time, Raza is better. He's got that extra point of might. I think he is a little bit more vulnerable. If I'm not mistaken, I think he might be defense 4, but that's he may be defense 5, but that's not the be all and end all. I'm going to go into it slightly more later. We don't wind up playing Raza, but I agree with you. I think especially as he was leading an infantry contingent, I certainly wish we had Raza several times. But yeah, moving on. For the Portrayer, I found a great synergy with the Golden King of Abrakan. His special rule, coupled with the Wraith's Harbinger of Evil, can stop your opponent getting key charges on terror-causing units, or best of all, make a hero fail at standfast and leave the battlefield. The Golden King's might and fight value are not great for a hero of his cost, but he has 4 attacks and 4 wounds, so he can tank well. Yeah, that's certainly an interesting thought. I think he's a great model. I really, really do like the Golden King of Abrakan. I'm not sure I would factor him into our list. I think that, like you say, to get the full value out of it, you probably, maybe want a couple of Wraiths. I don't know. I'd have to really think about that. I think that is a different strategy to what we were going for. But I'd love to see a prospective list that had the Golden King of Abrakan at its centre. I think that could be really interesting. Whether it's a top table list, I don't know. But I think you could... If you play tested it and you really thought about it, I don't see why you couldn't make a competitive list out of it. I found these 2 best hero synergies in the list, so I think that either combination is good for a single army, but that's from my small local experience. And yeah, I'd certainly, as I mentioned earlier, I am sitting here. This episode is going to be about Warhammer doubles, but I am sitting here with the full knowledge I've gained from both tournaments. And small game experience is definitely valid. Playing in small groups is definitely valid, especially if you have a group of friends that are switched on. If you had a very competent group of friends, I honestly, if you were playing at a good level and a couple of you had been to tournaments, I don't see why you couldn't turn up at a tournament and straight away go 3-3 or 4-2. There's not some hidden secret. One of the biggest things I've learned through all of this is don't doubt yourself. I really went into these games thinking there was going to be some sort of massive trick that I really wasn't going to get and just be totally outsmarted. And honestly, it's a handful of things. That's the difference between tournament play and playing at home with your mates. It's a few things, maybe a dozen things in total, and they all range from the layout of the boards to how you think about making your army through to what scenarios you play. But the difference, it's night and day, and at the same time, it all happens in 1 hour, if you get what I mean. Yeah, we're going to that more, but yeah, don't discount your experience. You can turn up with a decent army if you've thought about it well and played a lot of scenarios and given yourself time to learn that army. You can turn up and you can do all right. And hopefully, once we've been through these 2 tournaments, through these 3 episodes, you understand why I've come to that conclusion. I certainly didn't. Don't get your hopes up. I certainly didn't run away with things or anything like that. But I did all right in my opinion. Anyway, back to Wade's letter. I think you're going the right way with cheap, hard-hitting troops to keep your troop numbers up. The higher numbers allow you more bows, allows you more dice in fights, and also enables you to get more traps on your opponent. So don't fall into the need for too much cavalry. Their charge bonus with lances only great when you know that they have the charge. They can be quite vulnerable when counterattacked, so keep them in reserve and charge into key combats to get the extra fight, knockdown, and bonus of lance for the kill. I actually use my bowmen as swords in my army, slowly advancing while firing when ranks have closed, and use them as extra numbers in combat, ignoring their bows with the spear supports in behind. Hope my insights do help you in your tournament preparation, and that it might have added a few things that you have not thought about. Keep up with the good work with the podcast. Listening to it feels like we're having a conversation with someone like-minded. I'd love to hear from you as you continue along in your journey, and I hope that you do well in your upcoming tournaments. And yeah, thank you, Wade. That was quite a decently long email, and you've obviously taken some time to think about some of the things I've discussed, and yeah, you've obviously listened to quite a few episodes, so I really do appreciate that. That last paragraph there, again, I don't want to skip ahead to the content further on. All I will say is, one aspect I probably disagree with you on. On the other aspect, I wish I had listened to you a little bit more if I were to change the army list. I will try and remember to point out that Wade said this when I come to my conclusions. And then just quickly following up, Wade pointed out that I had my email address completely wrong on all the podcast locations in the write-up. So if you have written to me, I reply to every single email, and I have read out every single email I've received. So if you've emailed me, it hasn't come through. My correct email address is Middle-earth In Mercia, all one word obviously, at gmail.com. It's Middle-earth In Mercia at gmail.com. So I do apologise if you've clicked on the email list and sent me an email, on the email link, and it's automatically applied it. I do apologise if you've done that, you've sent it through to me and it's not been received. Please do send it again. I'd love to hear from you. These for me are always sort of the highlight of the studio and editing work is going through the correspondence. But yeah, thank you, Wade. Some good topics there, which I definitely hope I remember to bring up later in the podcast. Hi everyone. So, as you may have guessed from the episode contents, the whole next section of the podcast is just basically all going to be about Warhammer doubles. That's going to fill the main content of this episode. I have alluded to it that this being my first ever tournament and also my first ever tournament where I was doing the podcast, the recordings were a bit ad hoc, they're a bit all over the place. Sometimes the audio. I don't think any of it is bad, but it's inconsistent with what you would normally expect. But on the bright side, I do think although it's a bit rough and ready, it really does give you a good idea of what that first tournament was like for me and what I was feeling. So yeah, it's not as well produced as my previous episodes, but I think it's going to give you what you've been looking for. So I hope you enjoy it. I'd really appreciate feedback on aspects you enjoyed, didn't enjoy, what you would like to hear more of. But yeah, here we go, guys. Evening, everyone. It is the Friday before Warhammer World doubles. I have been up incredibly late. It is very early in the morning when I'm recording this, and just desperately getting my army done. I've really pushed the boat out on the painting, and perhaps a bit too much off. I think I should have stuck. I got overconfident, and I think I should have probably stuck with my plan to just get everything battle ready and then come back to the level of quality I wanted. Yeah, admittedly, last week's heat wave did not help. I've got a new puppy, and between him not being happy with the heat, me not being happy with the heat, I just didn't get the amount of painting done that I wanted. My aim was to get 4 done a week, and yeah, basically I didn't get anything done that week, and that left me with a 4 deficit for this week. And I don't know what overcame me, but for some reason I decided I would leave the King and Siladan till last, and I just couldn't. I didn't have it in me to do a poor job on those because they weren't my hero characters. But I have just about got everything battle. Well, not just about everything battle ready. 90% of it is to really good quality. I've done all of mine and Chris's bases to a very high quality, and yeah, I'm hoping, because I know that it forms part of the pointage, that we can pick up some best army votes. Not best in show, but best as in the armies you played. I know Chris has painted to a good quality, and I've really pushed the boat out on some of my models in terms of highlighting and stuff. It's well above tabletop quality, and I'm hoping with all matching bases and how much effort I've put into the bases that we can pick up a few of those votes. I just hope it doesn't pull us down too much that Suladan is done above battle ready, but isn't as good as I would have hoped. And the King is also the same, but also not quite as good as Suladan. And there's a few bits here and there which I just haven't had time to clean up. I've not had time to put the quivers on. There's the spearmen that have had bows added to them. So yeah, I feel a bit gutted that I've not got that entirely done, and I hope Chris doesn't suffer for it because he's got it entirely done. But yeah, it has been really hard getting the army ready. I'm not gonna lie, and it has taken away some of the enjoyment from the preparation. My best advice on that in the moment right now is, I would say, if you're going to sign up to an event and you haven't got the army ready, really, really commit in your mind that you're only doing the bare minimum, and then everything above that it is extra. I set the bar too high, and I've really suffered for it, and it's been really hard, to be honest. Like last 2 weeks, I haven't spent as much time on things like my partner, and at times even my new dog. I haven't neglected him. Please don't call the RSPCA on me. But yeah, I've just made things a lot harder for myself, and I wish I hadn't done it like this. I do have a 95% done, absolutely amazing army. But let's hope that I get like we pick up some of those best army ones. I'd be really happy if we could get like I think everybody gets 2 votes. I don't know if you can give them to the same people, but if we got 2 or 3, that would be great. I do think as a force, as a cohesive force, it looks really good. But anyway, I just really wanted to quickly go through the army list because I know I'm not going to have time in the morning. So yeah, in my army is 25 models, 11 bow, 400 points, Serpent Horde obviously. Army leader is Suladan on armoured horse, 115 points. In his warband is 2 Harad Raiders with lances, 22 points. And then he has 2 Harad Raiders, 22 points, with War Spear, 2 extra points, total 24 points. Then we have 6 Harad Warriors with bow and spear for a total of 48 points. Then in Warband 2, we have it led by a Haradim King, 60 points, with a horse, 10 points, Wolf Spear, 5 points, making a total of 75 points. Then we have 6 Abrakan Guard, 54 points total. Then we have 5 Haradim Warriors with bow and spear for a total of 40 points. And then we have 2 Watchers of Karna for a total with twin blades for a total of 18 points. And that makes each warband, first one 11 models, 6 bow, 213 points. Second warband 14 models, 5 bow, 187 points. And then in Army 2, which is Chris's force, his is a total of 19 models, 9 bow, 399 points. Just couldn't find a way to spend that extra 1 point. His leader is the Betrayer, 120 points. On horse is 10 points for a total of 130. He then has 3 Harad Raiders with War Spear for a total of 36 points. 1 Harad Raider with banner for 25 points. Then he has 2 Harad Raiders with War Spear and bow for 26 points. And 2 Serpent Riders they come with the lances for a total of 26 points. Then in Warband 2, he has a Haradim King. He's the same as the last one, 60 points. Then horse, 10 points. War Spear, 5 points for a total of 75 points. He then has 7 Haradim Warriors with bow and spear for a total of 56 points. Then 2 Haradim Warriors with spear for a total of 14 points, and that makes each warband, the first one 9 models, 2 bow, 254 points. Warband 2, 10 models, 7 bow for a total of 145 points. As it's late and I've been through it before, I'm not going to totally go through the full methodology, but you've heard me speak about it before. Our idea is that both halves have a decent amount of mobility with a reasonable amount of cavalry that should allow us to quickly move at least, from the way they're split, Chris has 254 points on horse effectively in one warband, and I have something like I can't remember, but I've actually not read everything out here. I've realised that I've written it wrong, and I had 2 extra Serpent Riders, which are factored in but aren't written on this list, so they are in it. I'll have to add that in, but it does equal a total of 400 points. The total points are correct. I've just missed them out there. But yeah, I've got 5. I've got 5 horses in one warband for a total of something like 160 off the top of my head, rounding up. That can move very quickly, and then Chris has 254. The idea is that we can move rapidly, destroy one force of our opponents because we have to start separate quite often, and then we can focus on the objective. I've really found in my practice games that Harad work really well if you can just apply a numbers advantage to an area where your opponent is overstretched or otherwise weak. Destroy that and then use your numbers advantage, which hopefully is leaning even more in your favour at that point, to wipe out the rest of the enemy force. So that's what we're going to be going for. So yeah, that's just my quick roundup before tomorrow's event. I am feeling a bit exhausted. It's very late. Like I say, it's mainly down to the painting rather than anything else. The army list had to be decided a while ago. Yeah, just onwards and upwards with tomorrow, really. Hopefully I get a good night's sleep, not too tired in the morning. I can shake off the stress I've sort of created myself and try and enjoy tomorrow's event with Chris. So hopefully the next recording is from tomorrow morning. I'll speak to you then.
Alright, so Chris, it's the morning of. We've arrived at Warhammer World. We've got all of our stuff. Your army is very nicely 100% done. Mine's like 98% there. I didn't quite finish Silverdan, didn't quite finish my king. I'm pretty nervous now we're 15 minutes out. How are you feeling?
Yeah, a bit apprehensive as to what we'll be facing and whether we've got the right force ready, but I'm sure we'll give it a good go.
I was feeling pretty boisterous in the car, but then when we walked in, I saw that guy with a giant eagle, so I started to get worried.
Yeah, a few trolls knocking about that could prove difficult for us to handle, but I'm sure we'll find a way.
I mean, we've got enough models that I'm hoping if we go up against trolls or something, we can feed them. You know, like that game we had a while ago where you had Gilgalad.
Oh, yeah.
And I just could not stop him because I was playing like bog standard orcs.
So you just ran a guy into him every turn.
Just feeding him, and there's only so many heroic combats you can do.
Yes, yeah.
But so me and Chris have submitted our lists, we're all checked in. They've got this cool app thing that's going to do the standings. And we're just really sitting around waiting to find out what our first matchup is going to be.
Yeah, it doesn't get released till at least 10 o'clock, does it? So we're going to have not much time to prepare for what we're facing. But
we're not going to be checking in during our games because it'd be far too much for us to handle. But we are going to try and check in throughout the day and sort of keep a audio log of how we've been getting on. Without, cramping it too much. Oh god, it sounds like someone's got a baby.
So they have.
I really hope that a child's not at the table and make it even more stressful.
Yes, they're there to put us off, I think. Yeah.
I'm really keen to see what our first army's going to be.
Yeah.
Going to decide everything, really, isn't it? And scenario.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, we'll see how we go.
Yeah, we're just quickly refreshing the rules. I think we'll be all right, but yeah, we will check in later.
Great, over and out.
Cheers, right.
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's the Sunday of Warhammer Lord of the Rings doubles being held over the 30th and 31st of July. I'm sorry that on the Saturday, because I did want to do more updates, but it being our first ever tournament day, a lot of our games overran. There just really wasn't realistically any time to do any recording without sort of really having an impact on the overall enjoyment of the day. And I did always say that this wasn't primarily going to be a sort of like a live update. This is going to be breakdown, assessment, and letting you know how it got on. More good than bad, really, from this first day. It panned out as one major victory and two major losses. But I want to go into details with them, and I want to go into what the army lists were. And first, I just want to talk about like the overall experience of the day. And so they've got a pairings app called I think it's Best Coast Pairings. That works really, really well. Everybody uploads their army list on there. It really sort of eliminates the need for all this paper, which I think is good from an organisational point of view. And good to reduce the paper, really. But as to what you're exactly meant to do if you don't have a smartphone, I don't know. There are a few people out there. Anyway, that was really good. The event's been really well done. Lunch was really decent. It's really fun being at Warhammer World. Great experience there. Anyway, two great games against two really generous pairs of opponents. Couldn't really ask for more. Really fun games to play against. There wasn't any nitpicking. It was like, you clearly intended this to be this. There was lots of sort of double verification of how people did things in that, like being like, so this is 10 inches, are you sure with that? And so on. Those were two really great games. Yeah, 10 out of 10, fantastic experiences. But unfortunately, one of the games we had today, yeah, I mean, maybe we caught them on a bad day or something, but it wasn't a generous game. It wasn't an enjoyable game. The way they conducted themselves, we sort of were as friendly as we were to everybody else, and they just weren't interested in engaging with it, really. One of the guys would have been fine as just sort of, a neutral review, really. But the other guy, it was always, oh, we've got to measure that. And when it was his stuff, it was like, nah, it's all right. There was one instance in deployment
where his own teammate had to tell him several times, you've deployed too far forward there. You need to come back. And yeah, it took several promptings for him to do that. Well, a couple of things, where it was like, well, we can either have a big bust up over this, or like we can just let it go and keep going with the game. And I do think that had an impact on the result. And there was lots of various things, like, just not being very aware, getting in a personal space without being polite about it. The whole thing was very, very negative. And yeah, I'm really sorry to say, it was one of those sets of opponents when you think about going to a tournament that you're just like, God, I really hope I don't play with someone like that. And it's complete. Obviously, I'm not attaching this to the result of either game, because I'm going to go through that in a minute. But it has absolutely nothing to do with the result of the game. I would prefer to lose to someone that is a great opponent to play, that is enjoyable to play against, and I would prefer to win against one of those opponents. And yeah, it was just a very, very negative experience. It was a negative experience for Chris, and it made the 2 hours 15 a complete drag. Yeah, it felt like a complete waste of time and wasn't what we were there for. However, the other two games, as I say, awesome. Great games, great opponents, generous, only checking when it was really in question, lots of the double verification, lots of good chat, lots of good banter, and everyone was, civil and gracious, whether they won or lost. Couldn't ask for more, really. So, yeah, that's 3 out of the 6 games played, and 2 of them have been great. So, hopefully the next 3 games we get are going to be like that, and we'll barely remember that one game that was a duffer. So, on to the results. Our first ever tournament game was Total Conquest, which is essentially where you've got 5 objectives. Your primary starts in the centre, and then you've got Maelstrom deployment for the second half of your army. And we were playing against a combination of the new Dragon Emperor model with an alliance of Mordor, and I'm really pleased to say that we got a major victory in our first ever game, which was a great lift, really, and a bit of a weight of our shoulders that we can turn up and we can win a game. And yeah, it was a really fun game. It was cool to see the Dragon Emperor. It felt like nice, safe territory because I'd read about the Dragon Emperor, what he can do, and his palanquin. And then the rest was just all Easterlings and sort of a relatively standard Mordor army. I knew what everything did. They had Shagrat as the leader of the Mordor force. It was nothing unexpected, felt like safe territory. And really, I think me and Chris just played it spot on, really. We used the mobility of some of our cavalry to really sort of play games, because they were all on foot. They did have a drummer. They were all on foot. They did have a drummer. But yeah, we were able to use our superior mobility to sort of bait and switch, and like they thought we were going to one objective, and then we bounced back and we just wiped them off at one objective. There were some things that definitely went our way. Shagrat just felt completely nerfed the whole game. He just really didn't get any rolls. Didn't really get any rolls in terms of wounding. So there was that. But other than that, I think me and Chris just played it completely spot on. We met him in the centre. We fought a hard fight there, and we used our superior mobility to take one of their objectives away, while holding in the centre and retaining 2 of ours. So overall, they had the centre objective, one of their objectives, and we had the other 3. And we also, I can't remember if we killed Shagrat. We at least wounded him. So we got points for that, and they failed to wound the betrayer, who was our leader. And shout out to, I believe their team name was Baguette and Churro, who are Francois and Santi. Francois and Santi. Thank you, Francois and Santi, for being the best experience we could have possibly asked for our first game. Great guys, very magnanimous in defeat. Would love to play you again. Hope to see you at another tournament. Thanks a lot. So yeah, the score out of that one was 7-3 in our favour. And as you can imagine, that really sort of G'd us up. It was great to have that experience in the morning, going into lunch, being like, yeah, we can do this. Unfortunately, the next game was a major defeat. It was a 10-0 loss, unfortunately. So this was the Contest of Champions, which is where you start in 2 halves. And yeah, you pretty much just deploy, alternating against each other. Now, bit of controversy in this one, and I take as much responsibility as anyone. The guys seemed more experienced. They said, this is how you play it, and we basically went with what they said, having had a quick glance at the rules. I have read these rules before. I clearly didn't read them fully. When I was talking to people after, they were sort of like, there's an S there, that's both your leaders. And essentially we played it as only one of your leaders was amassing kills. And we got that wrong, really. And yeah, a real lesson that you need to sit there and you need to look whether it's plural or singular. And yeah, that was like playing with one hand behind our backs, really, because we had the Betrayer as our general. Yeah, as I say, I wish the fellas had got it right, but at the same time, I could have read the rules, I could have got it right. And yeah, so we rolled to see what was our primary. We got the Betrayer as our leader, and yeah, the Betrayer is just not a very good fighter, and they were using Theodred, really. I think we played the game pretty well. Sorry, the opponent we were against was Theodred's Guard. So it was just a wall of throwing spears, really, and we sort of looked at that and thought, they've got superior mobility, which is not great. That's a plus on their army list. And yeah, God, there's a lot of thrown spears there, but they do have a lot of horses which are vulnerable to bows. Less standoff. We don't want to go out into the open because they can dictate where we fight there. We're going to stand off, try and get as many bow shots as we can, and then choose some opportunities to maybe strike out or and get the Betrayer some sneaky kills. So we compelled someone forward and got the Betrayer 1 kill. And we had some antics where we managed to get Suladan onto a pointless Theodred when we had full might onto him, and I think it was 1 or 2 rounds of that, and we didn't get the rolls for wounds. So that's that, really. You can't. It is a dice game, and if it goes against you, you can't argue, because sometimes it goes for you. But yeah, I think we played that mostly well. There was just some stuff that went against us at the end. They managed to throw and spear through our lines on the edge, and then came through and caused some issues for the Betrayer. Betrayer didn't die. We just absolutely murdered Elfhelm. And yeah, which I think... Yeah, so we would have actually got 2 victory points if we had been playing the game correctly, just for killing Elfhelm there, because we did it with the Betrayer's combat. And obviously we would have played it very, very differently if we knew that Suladan's kills counted. So yeah, this was a 10-0 major loss. It was a bit of a disappointment. It was a bit annoying. The army we were playing against with the army we had, sort of felt pinned that we could only really do one thing, which was stand off, try and strike out when the time is right, and really deplete those throwing spears by the time they get to us. Turned out that their throwing spears weren't super effective. Like I say, they did allow them to break through the lines. But yeah, 10-0 loss. It is frustrating that we were playing the game completely wrong, but it is what it is. We'll just have to make sure never do that again, really. So yeah, that game just that did suck the life out of us a bit. It wasn't great fun. And then moving on to our third game, we were playing. Let me just get the rules up. Which one was it? It was Cornered, and we were playing against the new Assault on Lothlorien, Legendary Legion. And one thing we have picked up is that if you have the Legendary Legion in doubles, then you always know who your leader is, and that is one thing we've fallen foul of twice throughout the day, was that the Betrayer wound up being our leader, and he had to start in the centre, and really most of our quality fight for stuff, infantry, is in my half. So again, that didn't really go for us, but the deployment went all right. We sort of started on, if the south side of the board is our edge, started on the south side of the objective. I then came on the east, and we sort of fought them in the northeast really, and over the objective. And this was, in points wise, a 12-0 hammering. But again, I don't take this too heavy to heart. It was a mixture of, and this isn't an excuse, just a reality. We were very tired. Our first day, we travelled over here. I do think that was playing a factor in our decision making. It was an unfamiliar legion to us. There was a lot of unfamiliar units that, just due to our inexperience, we'd never played against. I've never played against bats. I've never played against this enrage rule. Did not know that a warg chieftain is actually pretty good. I thought it was pretty naff before this game, especially with enrage. It can do some stuff. And yeah, they got in with their bats early on, and they got in with their bats early on, and they managed to enrage and take 2 points of might off Suladan, which was a real bummer. And then I really sort of fixated on being like, I don't want that to happen again. And this is my fault. Left the door open. There was an opportunity for them to heroic combat, sweep in and have a go on the Betrayer. Just a traditional move. And yeah, I'd been focusing so much on the bats, I just completely missed it. Good on our opponents for spotting it. They took it. I'm not taking anything away from them. It's a game of your opponents making mistakes and you seizing it at the end of the day. And it just really started to fall apart from there. Suladan, had been nerfed pretty much by losing those 2 points of might. And with the Betrayer dead, we lost all our rerolls. We knew we had lost 3 victory points from that. And it was just a matter of them flooding the objective. We'd left it a bit late. We fought on too broad a front really, and I took too long to bring my infantry across. But unlike that second game where we were playing it completely wonky, and it's hard to learn lessons from a game that you played completely wrong, I feel very different about this loss. You can't know things before you experience them. It's one thing reading about our army, it's another thing playing against it. There's going to be other people playing Assault on Lothlorien. Next time we play against this army, it's probably going to be better. And that team that we're playing there was Stupid Fat Hobbits. I believe they've got, I need to check it out, but they've got some sort of social media presence called Tiny Gamer, I believe. And that was Matt and Adam, and we went and chilled with them and took part in the quiz in the evening. And they were two really nice guys. It was nice to end on a light note after having had a bad experience earlier. That you can have a loss, and it can not be the end of the world because you're playing against nice people. But that's kind of a summary of our first day. And I'll try and give more updates later. But if it's as busy during the day as it was yesterday, it's going to be really hard to actually do it on the day, and it might have to be an after the fact thing. My attitude now is, I think if we go out there with our heads screwed on, we really focus on the details, we can still have a good time and be relaxed about things, but just learn from the lessons of yesterday. I'm honestly hoping we can go out, get at least one win, and I'd really hope we can pick up 2 today, especially as we will have fallen right down the rankings, having had those 2 losses on the trot. I think that's achievable. 3 would be a big ask, but 1 or 2, that's what I'm hoping for. Wish us luck. We're going to go out there looking for blood and pick up some points. All right, cheers.
So it's lunchtime, day 2. We've just finished the first game and had lunch. I'm chilling out with the car. Chris has just popped in to go buy a couple of things in Warhammer World. Audio quality is going to be all over the show right now because, I'm just literally recording this ad hoc on my phone. I'm sat in the car. I don't know what the acoustics are going to be like. But, fantastic news. We won our first game of the day. Later on, when I do a full breakdown, I'll go through the guys' names. They were nice blokes. And they were playing a beautiful army, which was Radagast with his sleigh, and a load of eagles and Bjorn, basically. And I think the scenario is called Trapped. Again, I'll confirm. It's the one where you set up in the middle, and then they're on the alternate side, and then your ally is behind you. And the objectives are basically break the enemy, kill the enemy general, kill the secondary general, and don't lose your own guys, don't get broken. Which, when you're facing an army that only has 6 models, it's hard and it's easy in some ways. It offers its own difficulty. I think the lowest fight skill they had was 7. So only having 1 striker, that was really difficult for us. Basically, we thought they were going to sort of pressure us immediately with Radagast, try and get a channeled panic steed off on our cavalry because Chris was in the centre, but they didn't do that, and they did allow us to sort of join our forces together, and then we started peppering them with arrows, and we actually got a couple of wounds, 3 wounds. I think we got a wound on Radagast, which was later healed. We got a wound on a eagle, which was later healed, and then we got another wound on an eagle with the bows. So that sort of pressured them, made them come to us. And then they did. I did think they made a little bit of a mistake in that they very, very rapidly burnt through all of their might on Bjorn. I think it was gone in like 1 turn of combat. They did a heroic combat, and then I think they used 2 to kill everybody in that so that they could continue on from it. And it just meant they had no might on that flank. And with Suladan and a king over there, we had plenty of might to just keep controlling things. Do have to say, luck was on our side with priority. Time and time again, priority went to us, which really allowed us to also save our might. And then on the right, the first turn of like proper combat, we did kill 2 eagles straight away, bringing them down to 4 models. But then we really had to spend the rest of the game wiping out the rest. A 7-0 victory for us.
So I just want to jump in quickly and add some extra context to my recordings from Sunday. On Sunday, I was completely unaware at this point because I hadn't had access to a test or anything. But I'm fairly certain on Saturday morning sometime I caught what must have been a fairly quick-acting case of COVID and came down with symptoms early Sunday morning. And I really felt like I had basically swallowed some sandpaper. And the reason I say I'm fairly confident is because I pretty much hadn't seen anyone during the week. And when I came back, I saw my partner on the Monday. And by Tuesday, she was also presenting with the same symptoms. And we did test during the week. And we had COVID. So I just wanted to say I'm not miserable on these recordings from Sunday. And if I sound a bit rough in those ones, that's why. I was having a great time, I probably sound a little bit rough in the first recording where I go through game 5 and 6 because I was on the back end of it, but by the time we get to the full roundup and the lessons learned, I'd totally recovered. But that's why I sound like that. It wasn't anything to do with my mood. Hi everyone, so I'm back in sort of the studio environment now, and so I'm going to take you through the final 2 games and then leave it there for a bit, and I'll come back and do my summary another time. But was terribly sick with COVID for about a week. Just didn't really feel like doing the summary of these, and me and Chris pretty much jetted off as soon as the awards were done. But I'll take you through these 2 games, and then the summary will wait for another time. So game 5 was against a couple of chaps called Tom and Steve. Their army was called I Don't Mind Which One. And the scenario was Take and Hold. So this is the one where you start in 4 different corners. The centre objective is Site of Power. Everything within 6 inches of it is resistant to magic. You get 3 victory points if your team has more models within 6 of the objective marker, 5 if it's at least double, and 7 if it's 3 times or more. You get 1 victory point for causing 1 or more wounds on the enemy leader. If you kill the enemy leader, you instead get 2. You score 1 victory point if the enemy force is broken at the end of the game. And you score 3 victory points if they're broken and you are unbroken. Now I'm going to share another, what some might call, controversial opinion here. But I've been doing it so far, and I want to continue to be honest with you how I felt it in the moment. And I do think I've mellowed a little bit on it since walking away, but I do also still stick by my opinion at the time. And yeah, sitting down game 5 and looking at their army and seeing they've got the Witch King and a Barrow Wight in one force, and then they've got 2 Barrow Wights in the other force, and a lot of orcs, and it was just, okay, this is obvious what they're doing here. They're going to be creating the terror, and they're going to be sending out lots of magic. And yeah, I don't know whether you can truly call the list meta or not. I'm not up on what is the current Angmar meta, but I know that is a mechanism that many people utilise, and the Barrow Wights are considered to be quite unenjoyable to play against. And yeah, I'm not going to lie. Game 5, sitting down, what would be, in my mind, my ultimate, I don't want to play that list because I know I'm not going to have a fun game, because I'm just going to be sitting there doing courage tests all game, seeing whether I can get into combat with a 6-point orc. Yeah, it was very frustrating, and especially at Warhammer World Doubles, which obviously how the scoring is done, it's not intended as a competitive gaming event. I think you can take a list like we did that's going to give you a shot, but when 50% of the scoring isn't to do with how many games you win, it like literally 25% of it is more or less about your opponent's enjoyment. I'm not having a go at Tom and Steve on a personal level. When you've got a relatively low courage force, yeah, I know there's probably a few of you out there screaming, well, you should have prepared for that. You should have brought a war horn or something like that. I would have thought about those eventualities if I was going to a less fluffy tournament. We mainly thought about theme first, and then we thought about how we could make it competitive. Well, as best as we could. And yeah, it was only tolerable because Tom and Steve were decent dudes. What really didn't help was the power that the Barrow Wights have. They had 3 of them. That allows you to like freeze people, and you've got to roll a 6 to break out of the trance. And I think it was because it was a fairly new list to them, to be fair. They definitely weren't gaming us or anything like that. They explained it terribly. They accidentally implied that it was basically an area effect. If I had known it only affected 1 model at a time, I would have just been like, oh, okay, and just we would have charged all our cavalry in, but I thought they could just cause this chain reaction amongst our cavalry, and that was them explaining it poorly, and once again our inexperience. And all I can really say, because this was the second time at this tournament that we got caught out, is if someone is explaining a new rule to you that you don't know, either call a TO or ask to see the section in the rulebook and read it yourself. Do not take their word for it. Sometimes people will be doing it maliciously. Sometimes people will just have explained it poorly. But check, because it was one of the worst feelings of this weekend, was coming away and then finding out you got something completely wrong. And I'm sure it won't be the last thing I get completely wrong, or the last time I don't check. But yeah, try and keep it to a minimum. I will certainly be in future. But yeah, essentially, it just became an absolute grind. All they did was they just assaulted Suladan and my king with magical powers over and over again. Eventually, I ran out of will. Eventually, even with the 6-inch resistant to magic in the center, you roll a bad dice and then they've got you. I lost both my heroes. Chris tried to do a good fight in the center, and we ultimately lost. Yeah, perhaps it was my naivety, but I was not expecting anybody to take 4 Wraiths in an Angmar list, specifically going for the Terror Warhammer World Doubles. It was a fine game, but it wasn't enjoyable. But yeah, that's my takeaway. They beat us fair and square. Yeah, I'm sorry, Tom and Steve, if you hear this. I hope you don't take it personally. I do take issue with your army choice for that tournament. I don't take issue with the way you play the game. You were great guys to play against. I'd love to play you again in future, and I hope if you're playing this list, we're at a more competitive tournament, or if I see you at Warhammer Doubles again, that you take in, something with less cheese. I guess would be the way to put it. In general, I've heard it summed before. I like armies that allow you to do cool things, rather than armies that stop your opponent playing their army as how they play their army. And I think huge amounts of terror, especially when combined with huge amounts of magical powers, is that down to a T. Like Ugluk Scouts, that can be an absolutely filthy list. I've got no problems with it whatsoever, because Ugluk Scouts do what they want. They don't stop you playing the game how you want to play it. Yeah, I think I've spoken enough about that, and I'm probably applying an overly negative attitude to that. But I do have strong feelings on taking a list like that. I don't think it's right to be taking a list like that to a tournament like that. That's just my opinion. Anyway, moving on. Game 6. It was myself and Chris, obviously, against the Righteous Sword of Sauron, and I seem to have lost their name, but the game mode was Duel of Wits. I discussed this in the car, that this could really go either way, because there's no way of knowing what your ally has written down, there's no way of knowing what your opponents have written down, and me and Chris, obviously, in the car, we discussed that we would probably just gang up on one opponent, and we'd sort of indicate that by the way whichever one of us had to deploy first deployed. We would not be communicating who our targets were, because we wanted to play this entirely in the spirit of the game. And now the Righteous Sword of Sauron was a chap that was very, very in the spirit of the event. He had this really cool dark evil castle. I was so impressed. He had built the whole thing himself, and he had gone for a real assassin vibe. He had loads of I'm not going to say it, the ones that begin with H, the Harad assassins. He had loads of Watchers of Karna, and it was all led by Raza. It was really, really cool, really themed, completely unmeta list for Harad. Not terrible, but completely unmeta. He was in full cosplay, Harad assassin cosplay, darkened eyes and all that. And then his friend who was playing Corsairs of Umbar, and his list was a bit more meta. It was not a bad Corsairs list at all. He had lots of those berserkers there, lots of crossbows, lots of thrown weapons, the usual things, and Dalamir. I meant Delgamar. It should have been Delgamar. I'm going to continue to say it wrong, but I meant Delgamar. Anyway, me and Chris completely ganged up on the Corsairs. That's the way it went down, and we literally wiped them out to a man. Dalamir was the last man standing, and as it turned out though, so they had something I honestly think they had 3 models left at the end, but unfortunately one of them was Dalamir, and my thinking in my mind had been, I'm going to choose Dalamir because he's with all the crossbows, so they're probably going to hang back. They'd be a good target for us to wipe out or wipe them out. Chris, however, chose the bosun. Now, I killed the bosun literally in turn 1 when I just completely, with my whole force, overran half of the Corsairs' Berserker force, which is stacked up on the line. I did a heroic combat with Suladan, a Watcher of Karna, I think it was, and a Serpent Rider. Serpent Rider and Suladan went round, just straight up murdered that bosun. It was great. That was a really fun moment. But yeah, as it came down to it, their targets were both the Betrayer. Both of them chose the Betrayer. Chris, I think, will admit he made a little bit of a... Oh no, sorry. Their targets were the King and the Betrayer. Now, Chris made a little bit of a mistake in that there was plenty of time to get the Betrayer out there, and unfortunately the Betrayer got surrounded and he got murdered by Raza and Dalamir. I do think it was a mistake that shouldn't have happened, but at the same time, I made a mistake that shouldn't have happened, in that I really, really, really wanted to kill Dalamir, and I tried to get my king to climb over a wall, because I had might and he didn't, to get over there so that I could fight Dalamir, and then have some people fighting him in the doorway as well, and my king rolled a 1, and I decided not to up that to a 2 so that I didn't fall on my butt. And basically my king fell over, and then the next turn Dalamir charged him, and even though my king had some extras in the fight, we lost the fight. He put all the strikes on my king, he killed my king, and it turned out the king was their target, leaving us with no targets alive, and then with Dalamir alive. So, 2 stupid mistakes by Chris and myself respectively that just shouldn't have happened. And we wound up losing that game 6-7. And really, it was entirely in our hands. And that meant we finished the tournament 2-4. And really, yeah, the result should have been different. I'll save it for my summary. I've really gone into these games in detail. But I can't remember their names. But 2 great chaps. And as I was talking about earlier, half the points of this tournament were for theme, and they were for best army, and I will tell you who I voted for later, but the Righteous Sword of Sauron, who were our final game, 2 of the nicest people we played, and 2 of the themiest people we played, won the entire tournament, and I think their record was 3-3, and yeah, that's why it's important to think about what army list you're playing. Allow yourself to win a decent amount of games, but you've got to also pick up those votes. And yeah, I think there were a few people that perhaps weren't bearing that in mind based on their army lists. Yeah, I mean, I've gone into it in enough detail, but yeah, 3 of the people we played, yeah, fairly meta lists in the right hands. But yeah, there you go. Anyway, that's enough for now. I'll save all the breakdown for my full analysis. But those were those 2 games. I am, everyone, completely recovered from COVID, and yeah, this is after Ardacon. This is in the present now, but I wanted to give you the full analysis without spoiling what happens at Ardacon. But the full analysis, I've had lots of time to think about this tournament. I've had lots of time to think about how much I enjoyed it. I've had lots of time to compare it to Ardacon, and also to think about our coverage of the game. So, I'm going to start off with just go through everything. Positives, negatives, and brief summary, and then we're going to look at the tournament as a whole. I think I have probably done enough about individual games. So, game 1 was a major win, I believe, for us on Total Conquest, my favourite scenario of doubles, against the Dragon Emperor and Shagrat, all kitted out. And yeah, just went exactly well for us. Great guys. I'm going to get their names up now. Francois and Santiago. Yeah, it was a 7-3 win for us. Major win. Great players. Really nice looking army. Best possible first game at a tournament we could have ever had. Thank you, Francois and Santiago. Game 2, Clash of Champions. You've probably figured it out by now. This was the game we didn't enjoy. I'm not saying their names. They were playing Theodra's Guard and Grimbold and some other stuff. Tons of thrown spears. They had Elfhelm in there. I think if we were playing the scenario properly, in all honesty, we would have won this game by quite some margin. I take responsibility for that, though. That needs to be something I learned. Don't just take your opponent's word for it. Yeah, I didn't enjoy the game, mainly because of how our opponents conducted themselves. But yeah, that was Clash of Champions. It was a bad game made worse by the fact that we didn't play it correctly. But there it is. That's how I feel. And I do think people do need to be aware. Vast majority of people at Lord of the Rings events are not like this. But they do exist. And the best advice I can give people is try and just put that in a box and leave it at that table. It's going to happen now and then. I think the mistake me and Chris made is we didn't take the negativity to the next table, but we certainly let it take the wind out of us. And I think if we'd been paying more attention in Game 3, maybe we would have enjoyed it that much more. Maybe our opponents would have enjoyed it that much more, and maybe we could have eked a win out of it. So that would be my advice on that. And then Game 3 was Cornered, where we took a thorough whooping. This was against the Assault on Lothlorien, which, having played it a lot, I do think it is quite a meta list at the moment. I do think it has the potential to do really, really well. And it was against Matt and Adam. At the same time, it's brand new. I can see why people want to take it. So a bit of leeway. Matt and Adam were also lovely, really good lads. We had a few drinks with them in the evening. I've got no qualms about it. I think me and Chris set out a strategy. It wasn't the best strategy. Didn't help. We were majorly inexperienced against, like, the knowledge I feel I have now against this list, because I've played it a fair amount now. I would have played the game completely differently. We just made the wrong choices. They made better choices. They won the game. It is what it is. Like I said, maybe we could have done better if we had brought better energy to the table. Yeah, their team name was Stupid Fat Hobbits. Matt and Adam, 12-0 win. It felt like a breath of fresh air compared to Game 2. So yeah, there you go. So Cornered is where half your army starts in the centre. We did have the Betrayer start in the centre, which certainly was not ideal. So yeah, you get victory points if the leader is still alive. You get victory points if one or more wounds on the enemy leader. You get 1 victory point if the enemy force is broken. You score 2 victory points if your team has more models within the central terrain piece than your opponent. If you have twice, you get 4. If you get 1 victory point if you have at least 1 banner remaining. As you can guess, by the 12-0 victory, they took everything. I was keeping my eyes on spiders because I knew that they were dangerous because of the enrage, and it wound up being a wild walk chieftain, which I honestly thought were rubbish, which was my ignorance. Certainly with an enrage, they are not rubbish. Game 4, I unfortunately don't have these chaps' name, but their team name was The Bird is the Word, and they were the Radagast and Eagle army, and the scenario we were playing was No Escape, which is where you sort of overlap each other in the centre, and then the other armies come on the side of the board. You get 3 victory points if you kill the enemy leader, 1 if you wound him. You get 3 victory points if the enemy force is broken, 5 if they're broken and you're not. You score 1 victory point if you have at least 1 banner remaining, 2 if you've got 1 and they don't. You score 2 victory points if you kill the leader of the secondary force. And yeah, basically in this scenario, we were 2-0 up as it started because we had a banner. They didn't. They had Radagast and 5 Eagles, I think it was. And me and Chris just played it really well. They had a lovely force, like really, really nice force. And I did say to them, like, this was really, really cool for us to get to play something like this, because this isn't something that we normally have amongst our sort of friend groups. We sort of prefer more traditional armies, and this was a proper Lord of the Rings army. And it was very cool to play against. They were really nice guys. I'm sorry I don't have your name. I hope you do hear this, because that was one of the highlights. Not just because we won, but that was one of the highlights of the weekend, was playing against your lovely painted force. And you had a great display board to boot. And I think we had the banner, and they were broken and we were unbroken, which made it a 7-0 major victory for us. And that was game 4. Then game 5, and I'm going to try and not go too deep into this one because I did do more in-depth analysis. This and the other was against Angmar with Tom and Steve, where you've got to get to the central objective. You get 3 points if you have more models in there, 5 if you have double, 7 if you have more than triple. 1 point for wounding enemy leader, 2 for killing him, 1 victory point if enemy force is broken at the end of the game. If you're unbroken, you instead get 3. Again, inexperience, should have read the rules on how the Barrow White's special power. that would have massively changed how we played the game. If we had known it was an area effect, it only affected one model, that would have very significantly changed the game. But that's on us. And wasn't a fun list to play against. Fun opponents, but wasn't a fun list. I'll just leave it at that. I've made it very clear. Got no problem at a competitive tournament coming against this, but a Warhammer World Doubles, I didn't think it was great. And then finally, Duel of Wits. I've explained why we lost that one. Yeah, that was pie on our face, really. That was completely on us. We made 2 silly mistakes and very much cost ourselves a win that should have gone to us. But on the bright side, I don't know. The app, unfortunately, locks you out of looking at the ins and outs of the tournament once you step away from it. Well, more than, I think it's like 3 days, which is lucky I took screenshots of this. So we were not... Look, I saw the full scorings. There's no way we could have won this tournament just because we won that game. But the Righteous Sword of Sauron, I don't know whether they would have won the tournament if they hadn't won this game. So that makes me feel more alright about it, because they were nice guys. They were very much leaning into the theme. They deserved it. And Duel of Wits, I don't think is it's not a proper competitive scenario in my view. It can go either way because you just don't know. Unless you want to step to one side and tell each other what the targets are. And even then, you're only increasing your chances slightly because you don't know what your opponents have written down. Yeah, I think this is a really cool scenario. This is that kind of scenario I like to play with my friends, but it's not really a true competitive one. So, yeah, all those things together. It would have been nice if we had gone 3-3, but we went 2-4. And on the whole, we had 4 fantastic games, 1 good game, and 1 game that, I would have been all right just sitting out and taking a 12-0 loss on. But yeah, there you go. So now I've fully rounded things up in terms of the games, in hopefully a more concise manner than I did on all my various recordings. With all the full information about what we were playing and so on. We can look at everything as the big picture. Was this a good first tournament? Would I recommend Warhammer World Doubles as a first tournament? 100%. Categorically, yes. If you are looking at a first tournament, this is just based on my experience. Obviously, I'm sure there are other great tournaments to go to as your first, but categorically this, in my opinion, is a good tournament to go to for your first ever tournament. Find a mate you like to play with, do some practice games for sure. The standard is not outrageously high by any means, but if you don't do some practice games, if you don't know your army, if you go in there having not read the scenarios, you could very easily come away going 0-6 or 1-6. But if you do a little bit of prep work, I struggled to see how you would do worse than 1-5. And I think odds on you'll probably go 2-4 like we did. It's definitely a good tournament. The vast majority of people are going there with theme in mind. As I say, 25% of the votes go for best sporting, 25% go for best army that you've played, not best army and show. That's a separate award. And all I would really appeal to the player base is, please guys, go to the tournament with that spirit in there. I mean, I think me and Chris had if you want to play if you want to play to win, which me and Chris definitely did. You've heard me sit here and strategize with our army. But if you're writing a tournament winning list, are you sitting down and writing a pure Harad list? No, you're not. If you're sitting down and you want to write a filth list, are you writing a pure Harad list? No, you're not. And I think we towed the line quite nicely in that we basically picked an army that we thought was a really nice theme. We had a nice idea for. We wanted to do different war bands with slightly different colour schemes to represent the different areas of Harad they may come from. Something we thought we would enjoy playing. Something that was new to both of us as well. I think that we struck the right balance, and I'm proud of that balance we did. So, but yeah, I highly recommend this as a first event. So, moving on to lessons learned about the tournament. So, number one, for starters, if somebody is coming at you with a new rule, something you don't understand, a completely different player profile you're massively unfamiliar with, we did do this 9 out of 10 times. Say, I don't know what that model is, do you mind taking me through it? And our foul up was, I think with Magic or extra special rules, anything that's beyond the base profile, you've got to look at how it's written. And the same applies for the scenarios. Double check everything. It is a foul feeling getting away from the table and finding out that you've done it wrong. It's not a good feeling, and that really, I think it's almost spoils your own sportsmanship and how you want to play the game, really, because I don't want to feel salty, even if it's for 5 minutes, about a game that my opponent has played in a fair and respectful manner. It's not good. Don't do that. Make sure you double check, and then you don't have to have that feeling. Number 2. When you're selecting event, either if you've got to prepare completely a low army, set the bar as low as possible for what your expectations are. Like, I would literally say, if you're starting a new army to go to a tournament, you've got to get the whole thing ready. Unless you literally have 18 months, something where it's absolutely beyond doubt, set yourself the target of, I'm going to have 4 colours on every model and a goblin green base. Set it low. Don't do what I did, where, I had, 4.5 months, which was totally doable, but at the same time, it was totally possible to muck up. And I mucked it up by setting the bar too high. I produced the best model bases I've ever produced for Lord of the Rings. And I produced some of the best tabletop playing miniatures I've ever produced. It was too high, and together with a mini heat wave, some stuff that was going on in my private life, everything suffered really. The end quality of my army suffered because I set it too high, and like I said, there were some things that weren't done. My social relationships suffered because I was putting too much time per week at points into my hobby, and my own sort of, mental health and spirit suffered. I didn't go to a dark place or anything like that. I don't want to make it out like that. But did I have some bad weeks? Did I have some sucky weeks? Did I sit there thinking, I'm not enjoying this when I was painting? Yes. And I don't want that for you. So that would be my advice. My best advice would be, get your army ready and then find a tournament. Or get 90% of your army ready and then enter a tournament that's 8 weeks ahead and you've just got to do 2 or 3 heroes. Have the majority or all of it done. Yeah, if you can't do that, do the former advice. But that's definitely the ideal so that you can take the stress out of it. Number 3, and I think this is something that could just be applied to anyone, not necessarily that's new to the tournament scene, but it's something we picked up when we were playing 40k, just because there's quite a lot of complicated rules. Specifically, I think the one that broke the camel's back was when you're near barriers, there's sort of a 1-inch suck-in range on the close combat. So you can sometimes basically decrease your charge range by about 2.5 inches. And that is playing for intent and declaring intent. And we were doing it all the way through, and we just found it super useful. And especially when our opponents were either already doing it or picked up that we were doing it and started doing it, those were some of the best and most relaxed games. Just saying to someone, I'm just outside of 6 inches here. Are you happy with that? Can you measure that? Otherwise, I'll move back, etc. That worked great, and it just takes so much of the stress out of the game. And in terms of gameplay, I think I would actually go as far to say that that's my top tip. Do that. It makes things run so much smoother. You don't get in these situations where, you know how it is. Even if you've got a gauge, sometimes it's just too close to call, and most decent players in that situation will say, let's roll a dice. 4, 5, 6 is me, 1, 2, 3 is you, you know. But every now and then it will be a player, or it will, you know, it doesn't even have to be a player that's like that. It could just be something that's really, really important to someone's game, and it adds a little bit of tension in there. And playing for intent, I think, just completely removes all chance. Number 4, playtest your armies. I would say in these tournaments, like, I was able to go in, and with my half, I fully understood how my army worked, and honestly, there's nothing I would change about my half of the army, because I had played so many games with it going in. I knew exactly how it worked. I knew what I liked about it. I knew what I didn't like about it. And the only way to change those things would be to play a completely different army. Not as in a different force, but just would have to completely revamp the composition. Chris's half, I think we only managed to get about 2 games in. And that was the real pitfall of that half of the force. And I take responsibility for that, because I did write both armies. But yeah, definitely, it was a weakness of our overall force that there was so much less playtesting on that half. Yeah, I mean, the rerolls to wound did work really well. And going back to the email I received at the beginning of the podcast, we had too much cavalry. Yeah, we had too much cavalry in terms of, there were situations, not because that it was a severe weakness or anything like that, but on tournament style tables, and this is something that I definitely learned, is typically there are 9 to 12 pieces of large terrain, and normally at least 3 of them are woodlands. And if you're not aware, cavalry moves to quarter distance and loses all of its charge bonus. So what this all added up to was typically, out of, like, Chris had something like, I don't know, 14 odd, maybe 15 odd cav in his half alone. I think that's right. It was definitely over 10. It was double figures. Anyway, typically what would happen is we could get 6 good charges in, and then the rest are milling about. And the rest, you've just got points not doing anything. And I don't think it was a disaster, because like a raider is 12 points. A serpent guard is 13. We're not talking huge points, but it adds up, and we could have had more numbers on the infantry. There wasn't a single time with the infantry where we wouldn't have said more infantry would be helpful. We would take that help every single time, but there were multiple times with the cavalry where we just had too much and we weren't able to apply it all. And yeah, what we did wind up doing with the Betrayer, like I think 2 times we managed to properly deliver those charges, absolutely devastating. With those rerolls, we were just getting those kills frequently. However, where the Betrayer really came in was when we were able to unite our entire force in the destruction of another force, and applying that 12-inch full rerolls bubble effectively to our whole army. That was absolutely devastating at times. Sometimes we did apply it to the bowmen, but because that wasn't our intent, we didn't have all 20 bows in one place, and frequently it would only be on about 10, which did limit its effectiveness. But anyway, I do think we used him fairly well, but in summation, if we had tested it more, we would have known these things going into the tournaments. We were lucky that the army played in a playstyle that suited us. But if you just picked something based on the meta and you didn't playtest it enough, you could very easily, forget about winning games, losing games. You could turn up to a tournament with a force that is completely opposite of how you like to play. And other than having 6 bad opponents, which based on this I just don't think is going to happen, I can't think of anything more that would decrease your enjoyment than just not clicking with the army. Number 5, play for what you want. So for me and Chris, I would say that we were playing probably 50-50 to win and to have fun. It was just as important for us to walk away with the win as it was for us to have fun. And I'm particularly thinking after game 2, we really let it not spoil our enjoyment of game 3, because we did have a good game against those guys, and we did put in the effort there. But I think Chris, maybe Chris would disagree with me. I don't know whether he'll listen to this or not. But Chris really took his eye off the ball in that game. And I was not as focused as I should have been. Compared to game 1, I was absolutely crystal clear in that. And in that game, I was just sort of making decisions and going with them. And at points, I think Chris could have supported me more. And not with me in game 6, but in game 6, I think, again, Chris let the fatigue get to him. And it's 2 possible wins, really, I think it cost us. I made a mistake, but I think in game 6, but I think in an ideal world, because it was such a simple mistake, my teammate could have caught it. Maybe you could be sitting there saying, "Oh, Sonny, well, maybe Chris could say the same about you about getting the betrayer killed." And maybe, but at the same time, we both had a lot of models on the table at that point. And I think strategy, you work with your teammate at the beginning of the game, but tactics, you need to be managing your own models until there's only a few models left. But yeah, that's just my takeaway. We both definitely did it in game 3. I do think Chris did it a bit in game 6. And I'm not saying you've got to beat yourself up for losses, because if it's not important to you, it's not important to you. But I am competitive, and winning is important to me if it's possible. Like, sometimes I think you can just sit down and you can have a game where the scenario and the army lists against you, and you're against a skilled player, and you don't have much chance of winning. And yeah, there's definitely no point beating yourself up over that. But there's nothing worse if you're a competitive player than thinking about a game you could have won and you didn't because of your own focus. And I think anybody that's listening that's played competitive computer games or competitive sport, you don't go into your next game, you don't go into your next matchmaking with the weight of the game before. Drop it. And I think that's something that I had to work on, and I think I was there by game 6, and I wish I had that spirit from the first game, and maybe a few games would have been different, because I've had that competitive spirit before. And yeah, if you've got it too, then just make sure you've got your game face on for every single game, because you will be disappointed if you don't. And if that's not you, if you're not that competitive player, if you're a fun player, then do that. Focus on that. Focus on your interactions. Focus on having a good time. All I'm saying here is, whatever aspect is important to you, make sure you put in the time at the table. Because once you walk away, there's no way to change it. And I'm happy with how I conducted myself with all the other players in terms of having a good time. I think I'm not perfect, so yeah, we're saying 9 out of 10 times I was that kind, courteous player that I want to be. Maybe there are a few times where I was tired on Sunday, where I was suffering with COVID. Well, didn't know I had COVID. I wasn't spreading it on purpose. I didn't know at that point. Yeah, maybe I was a bit grumpy here and there. And yeah, if anybody thought that of me, I am sorry. I didn't mean to be like that. But yeah, so I'm happy on that side. But yeah, on the competitive side, I could have done a little bit better. Now, I think that's all the broad strokes, like lessons learned, sort of the business speak that I'm no doubt bringing in from work here. I want to talk about specifics of the game, things I learned, things I had wrong. And I think I've mentioned it before from my games with Tom. But the biggest things I learned is that all heroic actions have to be declared at the beginning of the phase. I thought you could just wait until your specific battle came up and be like, I'm going to strike here, or I'm going to heroic combat. Well, no, I knew you had to do heroic combat at the beginning of the phase because it goes first. But yeah, heroic march, heroic channeling, didn't know they needed to go at the beginning of the move phase, and that's a big change. And also the fact that in a heroic march, or heroic move. Well, no, I knew. No, actually, we weren't playing at that. Heroic march or heroic move, that the hero has to go first, and that is, once you get it, it's fine. But if you don't know it and you turn up to a tournament, it will really bite you in the arse. That's really important for positioning. So those were two good things I learned going into it. At the tournament, the only actual rules thing that came up, other than models that I was completely unaware of, which I won't go into because I think you could just read the profiles, as I said, was what I'm going to call like the hit and slide, in that you can hit a model's contact zone and then slide, or if you've got the movement, you can slide all the way around it and hit models on the other side. I didn't realise you could do that, and I think I might stand corrected, but you can even hit someone like that and then slide into someone's control zone without having to fight them, because you don't have a control zone at that point. As long as you, I think that is correct. As long as you hit the model first, I don't know. Seek further clarification on that, but for sure, hitting the model and then sliding around, that was a big change, and that certainly changes a lot of things. We were just sort of being like doing things in a straight line, so maybe we would do it on the side of the model and stuff, but we didn't realise you could just slide around the base like that. Like, once someone told me, I guess it was fairly obvious. But yeah, that was one of the biggest rules things that I was unaware of. Things I would change in terms of the army composition next. So this one is fairly simple. Basically, I would drop one of the kings. I would swap him out for a Razza. We just didn't do it because we ran out of time, money, complications and all that. But yeah, I would switch out one of the kings for Razza, and I would drop maybe as many as 6 of the cavalry, so we would still have about 10 cavalry total. Drop about 6 of the cavalry, and swap them out for infantry. And that's basically it. I would probably put the Betrayer starting off with some infantry, just so that if we do need to start doing that, the bowmanship straight away, he's got some bowmen with him straight away. Other than that, I was very happy with how the army worked. I really think that it's just basically our inexperience that cost us a lot. There was that game that was played completely wrong. I think me and Chris were good enough to beat that army at that game if we had played it properly. I do think that we should have gone 3-3. I think that we were limited on our experience to go better than that, just because we just made some minor mistakes. Some of the things I've mentioned already. I think going into, if we went to this tournament again, I would be bitterly disappointed if we didn't go 4-2. I'm obviously recording this after Ardcon and getting an idea of what the field's like there and what the field's like here. And yeah, I think we could go 4-2 at Warhammer World Doubles. I think if we were to do better than that, we would need to go to a couple more tournaments, and we would need to we would need to go to a couple more tournaments, and we would need to bring. Obviously, I wouldn't bring filth to this, but we would need to just up the meta a little bit. Maybe bring in some allies rather than playing pure Harad. But yeah, in experience, I don't. Obviously, taking in respect that if we had gone 3-3 earlier, that we would have played better people. People who were on a better run at least. I don't think it's realistic to think that there's a scenario where we turned up with the experience we had and did better than 3-3. But I definitely think we could have done 3-3. And if we were to do this next year, I would aim for 4-2. Go to a couple more tournaments, really work on the list. And I think we could do that, especially with the experience I've got from having done 2 lots of doubles now. So next one, and yeah, this is just me unloading my thoughts unfiltered. I think some people would probably just keep this to themselves because it's going to make me sound a little bit bitter. I'm not bitter, this is just the reality, and this is my advice to you. For an army, I painted to a really good standard, and my bases were very good as well. And I was hoping to get more best army votes. The best, and I'm guilty of what I'm about to say. My advice to you would be paint your army, get your army completely done, and if you want to get best army votes, come with a display board. I think pretty much every single person that was in the finalists, in the nominations for best army, had a display board. And me and Chris both voted for the 2 armies that had display boards. The fact is, everybody's painting, like everybody that's interested in best armies, paint into a very good standard and is homogenous across their army. Whether they've got, 10 out of 10 bases or not, I know I'm a bit obsessed with bases, they're homogenous, they look good together as a group, they've got the cheerleader effect going on. If you want to single yourself out to get best army votes, you have to have the display board. And I don't know how I feel about that. It's not, like, in my opinion, like it's, yeah, and this does make me sound bitter, I can't deny it, but it's not really best army, is it? Like, it's best army and something. But it is what it is. It's allowed at all events. That's what's going to continue doing. I will just have to finish my army, and then I will have to make a display board, and then maybe I'll pick up more votes. As it is, I think me and Chris got 2 votes, which is pretty good. I'm happy with that. It would have been nice to get a little bit more. But yeah, as I say, I voted for the ones with display boards as well, because those were the ones that drew the eye. And all I'm saying really is, don't kill yourself like I did, getting your army painted to a great standard, thinking you're going to pick up those votes if you haven't done the display board. If you don't have time to do the display board, get the army done for one tournament, get a display board done for the next. The fact is, there's going to be people out there that have either had more time or they've been playing for a while and they've got the army done and then they've done the display board. And yeah, I just wanted to share that with you. I wasn't disappointed on the weekend, but yeah, having had more time to think about it, I am like, oh, I wish I hadn't tried so hard getting the army done, because I don't think I had a chance without that display board. And then just a general comment on sportsmanship, really. I think it's quite telling. One of the people we voted for best sportsmanship, we beat, and they were very gracious and very kind, and yeah, all smiles all round. And then one of the teams that we lost to, well, the other team we voted for best sportsmanship, because they were just a great laugh to play against, and it didn't feel like a loss. Sometimes those games where you're playing against great people, it's like playing against one of your friends, and you just don't care because it was fun. Obviously, if you're on a tournament run, if you're trying to win a tournament, any loss is going to be gutting. But for me, turning up, hoping to go 2-4 or 3-3, it wasn't that big a deal. And just you can get those sportsmanship votes by just being a great person, really, at the table, whether you win or lose. And finally, wrapping up, I think Warhammer World Doubles is a great tournament. I think it's a decent venue. It's really nice having the stores there, especially if you don't just live 5 minutes around the corner from Forge World. You can pick some things up that you had your eye on. Maybe you didn't make the ludicrously high threshold that it costs to get free delivery from Forge World. Yeah, it's really nice being in the home of Warhammer. I don't know if they do this for every event. For our event, they catered it in the staff canteen, and we got a really decent hot meal on both days with a dessert and drinks and coffee and all of that. And that just took a lot of stress out of it. And like the fact was that I think it was £90 for the ticket, so £45 each. And £45 each for a 2-day tournament that you get lunch on both days. Realistically, you would easily spend £10 on lunch and drinks and stuff like that both days. So £25 for the actual tournament, and it's at Warhammer World. That's great. I really like how the scoring's done. I do disagree a little bit with how the major loss, major win and all that is done. I think we had one where we lost something like 4-1, and that was considered a major loss because they had more than double. Yeah, that didn't really feel like a major loss to me, especially how close the game was. Like, if we had done like one thing, it would have been a draw or a win for us. So yeah, that's a minor quibble, but I did really like that so many of the points go to best sporting and best army, and I think that really should discourage people from taking those really gamey lists, and maybe just because, like, this is the first time, although ironically I got COVID at the event, supposedly post-COVID, or at least post-pandemic lockdown, Maybe there was quite a few people that haven't done it before and didn't realise that was how the scoring was done. It wasn't very well advertised that that's how it's done, and maybe it put them off next year playing lists like that, and encouraged to play more themey lists. I think I would like to have a think about how me and Chris could get more themey. Maybe we come with a mummock and all cavalry. That's definitely not meta, but quite fun. Or something like that. But yeah, all in, a great event. I would recommend it to anyone, and I would definitely recommend it as a first event. It's also like so nice to be able to do it with a friend as your first tournament. The security of having someone you know there to just assist you when you're unsure. That definitely set me up really well to go to Ardacon. So yeah, I think that's everything I've got to say about Warhammer World Doubles. And yeah, we'll move on to our next segment. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That was my first ever tournament. That was Warhammer doubles event that happened right at the end of July. I really hope you've enjoyed this podcast as much as I've enjoyed the experience of going to the tournament. And yeah, this feels like a really big achievement that all those months ago when I began planning this to have finally, taken that step. It's all been a lot of planning and play testing and thinking about things, and this was the first time of doing, really. Yeah, I hope, I think the production could have definitely been better. It's a bit all over the place, and I've tried to pull it together in post-production. But please let me know what you think, what you liked, what you didn't like. You can email me at middleearthinmercia@gmail.com. I'd really like to know your views in terms of what I've put out there, really, because I think I am doing something a little bit different, at least from sort of the YouTubers and the podcasters that I've personally listened to, and that's not a diss. I'm just trying to find my own niche, really, in this, and part of that is I am more or less, although I've got a rating where I'm not allowed to swear on the podcast, other than that, I am presenting my views pretty much totally unfiltered. And I know that means that I am at times presenting a negative view on things, but I hope that you can see I'm just explaining myself, and those negatives were a relatively small part of the experience. But I don't think it's right, to be honest, to say to new people, come to a tournament, guaranteed you're going to enjoy the whole thing, because it's just not true. Do I think you'll enjoy this more than a lot of other tournaments that support Games Workshop products? Definitely. My experience was overwhelmingly positive, but I did think I owed it to all of those of you out there that are considering going to a tournament to be brutally honest with you. And I think that with the way I've done things so far, those of you who are listening just to hear the story rather than advice on new tournaments because you're already existing tournament players, I think you want the true story. So that's what I've done. So I hope it's not come across as I'm bitter or overly focused on that. I've just wanted to give the full picture. And life's like that, it's like all things. There's got to be bad elements so you can truly enjoy the good. And honestly, based on this tournament alone, Middle-earth events are beating the ratio of life. So many great people. Yeah, I think I've mentioned before, I'm not a natural social butterfly, but I met so many great people. I just had an awesome time. And most of the elements that could be improved, I'm in control of. There was literally like one or two things that I wasn't in control of, and I've been through them, so I'm not going through it again. But yeah, I like to, as you know, randomly come up with a scoring system. So I'm going to give I'm going to give the Warhammer World Doubles event, I think, a 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10. The social, afterwards they did a quiz and things, but things could have been a bit better. I don't know. The quiz went a little bit on too long, and it really sort of stifled conversations, and then the bar closed relatively early. I think aspects like that could have been slightly better. I do think, especially with the knowledge of Ardcon and people playing properly competitive lists there, I do think there was a few too many competitive lists at this tournament for what it's angled at. But equally, there were some lovely and hilarious lists there, like an all hobbits army that was well over 100 hobbitses. But no, please don't focus on the negatives I've said. I greatly encourage you to go out and go to your first tournament. I am going to go into it more when I do the Ardcon podcast, but one thing I do want to cover is the level of play that you need to be competitive. And I'm only going to touch on it briefly, but it's just something that's come to mind because it's something that I've heard on other podcasts and something that I actually witnessed a couple of people. I accidentally overheard conversations talking about it, and it's the idea that there is some sort of like hidden skill or innate skill that you need to be competitive at these events. And maybe some of them were more alluding to the higher tables, but even there, I know I don't have experience of the higher tables, but even there, I would strongly disagree. I mean, one of the things I've seen batted around is like this idea that some people just have this skill to be running the numbers in their head and doing the arithmetic ad hoc and figuring out what their chances of doing this and doing that is. And I could not disagree more. I mean, I'm not going to go into my education, but I've in short, I've pretty much built my professional career on being good at maths. I'm very good at maths. But do you know what's better than being good at maths at the table or being good at odds at the table? Is experience. It's having played that exact scenario before and having a rough idea of what is the best thing for you to do in that situation. And honestly, there might be like the occasional player out there that's just a natural, but I don't think that the player pool in Middle-earth is deep enough. There aren't enough players that we're like. It's not like the Premier League, for instance, where we have some astounding natural athletes at that top level because the pool is so deep. You can practice every single day of your life, and if you don't have that natural advantage, you're never going to get to the top, and that's just the way it is. However, with Middle-earth, play some practice games. Make sure you go through your army list and you've played with it several times. And I guarantee you, don't turn up to maybe a 200-player event. Turn up to a 60-player event or something like that, and you will do fine. You will have a good time. You're not going to win every single game, but you're not going to lose every single game either. In short, don't be intimidated by it. The thing that separates you between, in my opinion, the top half of the field and where you are now is experience. And that's all it is. I feel, even after this tournament, felt very strongly that I can become as good as I want, dependent on how much effort I want to put in. And I believe that for the vast, vast majority of you that are listening to this, that's entirely true. And the reason specifically I bring this up is because I'm normally very confident in my own abilities, not in terms of being the best at everything, because I guarantee am not. But I feel that I'm reasonably self-aware, and on this, I was very unself-aware. I massively underestimated myself, and I think that has stopped me going to tournaments for a long time. I think there was a little bit in the back of my mind that thought I was just going to go to these events and get absolutely floored. And yeah, as long as you don't bring a completely silly list, as long as you play test, as long as you play the scenarios prior to the tournament, you will be fine. Don't go there putting a huge amount of pressure on yourself that you need to have a winning record or anything like that. Aim for 2 and 4 and you will be fine. So yeah, please, if you just want to go to a few tournaments, do it. If you want to become a competitive tournament player, appreciate that there's a lot of people out there with a lot of experience and you're going to have to put in the time. If you put in the effort, you can become competitive. And just bear in mind when you listen to some podcasts or you listen to some interviews and people are like, oh, I went to my first event and I won it. There might be, I'm not saying there's nobody because I don't know everybody in the community, obviously. But I would be willing to put money on the majority of the time those have been relatively small events. Don't put extra pressure on yourself and don't overly build it up in your mind. It's probably best not to take your first tournament too seriously in terms of don't go in there aiming to get top half. Just choose a list you like with models you like that you think is going to be moderately decent and turn up and treat it as a learning experience and you'll have a great time. Please take the jump if you're considering it. People on the whole are generally great and really friendly, and I had a great time, and I would certainly recommend it to anybody I knew that was a wargamer. That what I've seen, be it limited scope, the Middle-earth competitive community, well, tournament community, because I know this wasn't a purely competitive tournament, is the best around. That's how it looks to me, and I'm really happy to be involved, and I'm looking forward to everything that comes next. Now, I was intending to do a few extra features on this episode, but yeah, I've seen the runtime and it's looking like I'm probably going to be at around 2 hours. So I'm probably just going to do a one-off short to go over all the new releases. I know a lot's been said. I've resisted saying anything myself online because I wanted to say it here. So we'll handle that in a separate short podcast. What I've got coming is the Ardicon coverage. I'm really excited to present that. I think I've probably got 3 to 4 hours of content. I'm going to split it into 2 episodes. I'm really excited to both present the singles, the doubles, and Ardicon and how I got on, as well as talking about the team event and how we all got on there. Chaos in Arda, the social side of it, what that event is like. It's going to be good, so stick with us, and I think you will enjoy that content. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode. I don't want to drag it out for longer than I need. I think about 2 hours is the limit of what most of you are going to sit here to listen to this. Now, before I close out, I just would like to take a moment to thank the tournament organisers, all of my opponents, of course, my doubles partner Chris, and everybody that I had a chat to in the evening and a few drinks with. Really, you helped make the experience, and yeah, it was a great one, so thank you very much. It really would be great to get some feedback from the listeners as to how you've received this episode. So if you do feel like contacting me and letting me know I was blind arrogant on this, or I was right on this, or I was wrong on that, or just something that you'd like to see me add in for maybe the next tournament run in terms of coverage. Was it enough? Was it too little? Please let me know what you think. Email address is the same as it ever was, middleearthinmercia@gmail.com. This has been the Middle-earth In Mercia podcast. I've been your host, Sonny. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for following the journey this far, but it's not over yet. I hope you have a great couple of weeks or week or however long it's going to be until I next speak to you. Hope life treats you well and you hit those hobby goals. Until next time, goodbye.